The winter on Seven was not like winter on Earth. It was a living thing. It breathed and growled and hunted. And when the long dark came, even the strongest creatures on the frozen moon hid in their dens and prayed to their old gods. They had lived on this moon for 300 years. They looked like wolves but walked on two legs. Their fur was silver white and it shimmered like stars when the light touched it. They had golden eyes that could see in the darkest night. They had claws that could tear through metal. They were hunters, warriors, survivors. But tonight, they were just parents who had lost their children. Elder grandmother stood at the entrance of the great den. She was old, older than anyone could remember. Her fur had turned from silver to pure white long ago. Her eyes had seen 1,000 storms, but she had never seen one like this. The wind outside screamed like a dying animal. The snow fell so thick that you could not see your own hand in front of your face. The temperature had dropped to levels that could freeze blood in less than a minute. Even they who were born to the cold could not survive out there. And somewhere in that white hell, 7 of their cubs were lost. Pack leader paced behind her. He was a big male, the biggest in the pack, with shoulders like mountains and a voice like thunder. But right now he looked small. He looked broken. His daughter Myra was out there. She was only 2 cycles old. She had just learned to say his name properly. "Tell me again," he said to the communications officer. His voice was quiet, which was worse than if he had shouted. The officer, a young female named, kept her ears flat against her head. She did not want to say the words again, but her pack leader had asked. "The transport sled left the northern settlement 6 hours ago," she said. "There were 7 cubs aboard, returning from the learning festival. The sled driver was grandmother Suki. 4 hours ago, we received an emergency signal. The sled had crashed. Location was 12 kilometers north. Then, she stopped. "Then what?" "Then the signal went dead. We have heard nothing since." Closed his eyes. 12 kilometers. In good weather, a healthy adult could run that distance in less than an hour. But this was not good weather. This was the long dark, the worst storm in 50 years. "Send the rescue teams," he ordered. "Pack leader, we cannot. The wind speed is—" "I do not care about wind speed. My daughter is out there." Finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard it. "Stop." He turned to face her. There were tears in his golden eyes. "Elder grandmother, I cannot just—" "You can, you must." Walk to him slowly. She put her old hand on his shoulder. "I know your pain. I have buried 3 children and 2 in my long life. I know what it is to want to run into death's arms if it means one more moment with them. But you are pack leader. If you go out there, you will die. And then who will lead our people through their grief? So I should just let them die. Let my little Myra freeze to death while I sit here safe and warm." "They are already dead, my son." His voice broke on the words. "Nothing can survive in the heart of the long dark, not even us. The kindest thing we can do now is sing them home." Stared at her for a long moment. Then something in him collapsed. His shoulders fell. His head dropped. A low sound came from his throat, a sound of pure grief that had no words. And then the death songs began. 1 voice first, then 2, then a dozen, then 100. They gathered in the great hall and they sang. It was their way. When someone died, you sang their spirit to the next world. You told the old gods their name so they would be welcomed. The songs rose and fell like the wind outside. Mothers who had lost children held each other and wept. Fathers stood with their fists clenched and their eyes closed. Even the young hunters, who were supposed to be brave and strong, let their tears fall freely. It was a beautiful and terrible thing. But there was one person in the great hall who did not sing. Corporal stood in the corner, watching. He was human, one of only 5 on the entire moon. He had been stationed on 7 for 8 months as a liaison between Earth and the. His job was to build bridges between their species, to learn their ways and teach them about humanity. He had learned a lot in 8 months. He had learned that the valued family above all else. He had learned that they were proud and strong and kind. He had learned that they made excellent friends but terrible enemies. And he had learned that their cubs were the most precious things in their world. They could not have many children. Each cub was a miracle, celebrated by the entire pack. When a cub was born, everyone rejoiced. When a cub died, everyone mourned. Now watch them mourn, and something inside him refused to accept it. He thought about the 7 cubs out there in the snow. He had met some of them. Little Myra, who always wanted to touch his strange flat face. Young, who asked 1,000 questions about Earth. The others, whose names he could not remember but whose laughter he could still hear. They were just children. They were scared and cold and waiting for someone to save them. And everyone here had already given up. Moved quietly through the crowd until he found Bora, a young hunter who had become something like a friend over the past months. They looked up at him with grief-dulled eyes. "How far?" asked. "What?" "The beacon's last location. How far from here?" Bora blinked. 12 kilometers, but human, you cannot possibly. Was already walking away. He moved toward the equipment bay, his mind working fast. 12 kilometers there. 12 kilometers back. In the worst storm this moon had seen in 50 years. In temperatures that could kill in minutes and a human in seconds. It was impossible. But as he walked, remembered something his grandmother had told him when he was a boy back in. She had survived a war, a famine, and 3 different natural disasters. She had lost everything more than once and rebuilt every time. She had said, "The world will always tell you what is impossible. Your job is not to listen." He reached the equipment bay and started pulling gear from the shelves. He was not going to listen. The equipment bay was cold and dark. Moved through it quickly, pulling items from shelves and shoving them into a pack. Emergency heating units, thermal blankets, medical supplies, food and water, a portable shelter that folded down to the size of his fist. He was so focused on his work that he did not hear the footsteps behind him. "What are you doing?" Turned, pack leader stood in the doorway. The big's eyes were red from crying, but there was something else in them now. Confusion, maybe a little anger. "Getting ready," said. He turned back to his work. "Getting ready for what?" "To go get your cubs." There was a long silence, then walked forward until he was standing right behind the human. Even hunched over, the pack leader was a full head taller than. His presence filled the room like a storm. "You cannot go out there," said. "With respect, pack leader, I was not asking permission." Checked the seals on his thermal underlayer. "Good, no gaps." "You will die." "Maybe." "No, not maybe. Certainly. The cold will kill you before you travel 2 kilometers. You are human, you have no fur, you have no protection against the long dark. Your species was not made for this world." Stop what he was doing. He turned to face fully. The 2 of them stood there, human and looking at each other. "You are right," said. "My species was not made for this world. We were not made for ice or snow. We evolved on a planet where the sun was warm and the weather was kind. We have no claws, no fangs, no fur. By all logic, we should have died out 1,000,000 years ago." "Then why?" "But we did not die out. You know why? Because we are too stupid to give up." Turned back to his gear. "Because when the world tells us something is impossible, we do it anyway. Because we would rather die trying than live knowing we did not try at all." He pulled the experimental cold weather suit from its case. The research team had been developing it for months. It was supposed to provide survival capability in extreme cold for up to 2 hours. He would need at least 3 hours for the outbound journey alone. Watched him put on the suit. "This will not save you." "I know. The engineers said it needs more testing." "I know. You are throwing your life away." Sealed the suit and checked the heating elements. They hummed to life, spreading warmth through the layers. It felt good. It would not last. "Pack leader," he said, Let me ask you something. If your daughter was safe in here and my child was out there in the storm, what would you do? Opened his mouth, then he closed it. You would go, said. You would not think about it. You would not calculate the odds. You would just go because that is what a parent does. That is what anyone with a heart does. But they are not your children. They are not even your species. They are children, pulled on his pack. The weight was heavy, but he had carried heavier. Where I come from, that is enough. He started walking toward the exit, moved to block him, then stopped. Something had changed in the pack leader's eyes. The anger was gone, so was the confusion. What remained was something harder to name. Respect, maybe, or wonder. Your species confuses me, said quietly. You are small and weak. You have no natural weapons. You cannot survive in heat or cold. You should be prey, not predators. And yet you have spread across 1,000 worlds. You have built things that my people cannot even imagine. You have done the impossible so many times that you have forgotten what the word means. Smiled behind his visor. We do not forget, we just do not care. Why? It was a simple question, but it carried the weight of centuries. Why did humans keep going when they should stop? Why did they keep trying when they should give up? Why did they keep believing when all evidence said they should not? Thought about it for a moment, then he answered. Because hope is the only thing worth having, and we would rather burn out chasing it than live forever without it. He walked past and headed for the outer doors. The pack leader did not try to stop him this time. At the door, paused. He looked back at the great hall, where the death song still echoed. He looked at the who had gathered to watch him, their golden eyes wide with disbelief. He looked at the young hunter Bora, who had followed him from the hall and now stood with tears on his furred cheeks. Tell them to stop singing, said. Those cubs are not dead yet, and I am going to bring them home. He turned and pressed the button to open the outer doors. The storm hit him like a wall. The cold was beyond cold, beyond anything he had ever felt. It reached through his suit, through his skin, through his bones. It tried to crush him, to freeze him solid where he stood. Took a breath, the air burned his lungs. Then he stepped forward into the white. Behind him in the great hall, the death song slowly faded. They stood in silence, watching the monitors that tracked the humans' life signs. They saw him take one step, then another, then another. Pack leader moved to stand beside elder grandmother. The old female was shaking, though not from cold. He will die, said. Yes, replied, but he will die on his feet, walking toward those he means to save. Is that not a good death? It is a waste. Perhaps, turn to look at him. Or perhaps it is a lesson. Perhaps this is what love looks like when it has no limits, when it asks nothing and gives everything, when it does not count the cost. On the monitor, the small dot that was Corporal continued to move north, slowly, steadily, against all odds. They watched, and for the first time in 300 years, they began to understand what humans were really made of. The cold was a living thing. It wrapped around like a snake, squeezing with every step. It whispered in his ears, telling him to stop, to rest, to close his eyes and let the darkness take him. It was patient. It knew it would win eventually, but kept walking. The first kilometer was almost easy. His suit was working, his body was warm, and his mind was clear. He counted his steps to keep himself focused. 1, 2, 3, 4. He thought about the cubs waiting for him in the storm. He thought about their parents back in the den, listening to his heartbeat on the monitors. He thought about his grandmother and her words about impossible things. By the second kilometer, the suit started to complain. Warning lights flashed on his display. Power drain was higher than expected. The heating elements were working too hard. At this rate, he would lose heat before he was halfway to the crash site. Adjusted the settings. He lowered the temperature output, sacrificing comfort for time. The cold crept a little closer. He accepted it and kept walking. By the third kilometer, he could no longer feel his fingers. They had gone numb inside his gloves, dead and useless. He flexed them over and over, forcing blood to move through them. The pain when the feeling started to return was good. Pain meant he was still alive. He kept walking. The landscape around him was nothing but white. White ground, white sky, white air filled with snow that moved sideways in the screaming wind. There were no landmarks, no signs, no way to tell if he was even going in the right direction. He had only the memory of the beacon's last signal, stored in his suit's computer. A dot on a map, a hope in the darkness. By the 5th kilometer, his legs started to hurt, not from cold but from effort. The snow was deep, sometimes up to his knees. Every step was a battle, every meter was a war. His muscles burned, his lungs ached. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He kept walking. His mind started to wander. He thought about his childhood running through the streets with his friends. He thought about his mother's cooking, hot and spicy and perfect. He thought about his first day at the military academy, scared and proud and determined to make something of himself. He thought about the girl he had loved in university, with her bright smile and her terrible jokes. They had planned to get married after graduation. They had planned to have 3 children and grow old together, but life had other ideas. She got sick. She did not get better. He held her hand at the end and promised to live enough for both of them. He kept walking. By the 8th kilometer, the suit's sensors started to fail. Error messages filled his display, numbers that made no sense, readings that changed from moment to moment. He stopped looking at them. They did not matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was putting one foot in front of the other. He started to talk to himself. It helped keep his mind sharp. Come on, you can do this. One more step, one more step. The cubs are waiting, they need you, keep moving, keep moving. He sang songs from his childhood, old folk songs that his grandmother had taught him, military marches from his training days, pop songs from the radio, the ones with stupid lyrics that stuck in your head for days, anything to keep his brain working. By the 10th kilometer, his suit's heating system began to fail in earnest. The warmth that had protected him slowly faded, replaced by a creeping cold that sank into his bones. His body started to shake. His teeth chattered so hard he bit his tongue. He kept walking. He fell. The snow caught him soft and deadly. It would be so easy to just lie here, to close his eyes, to rest for just a moment. The cold was not so bad anymore. It was almost comfortable, like a blanket, like sleep. Forced himself to his knees, then to his feet. His body screamed at him. Every muscle, every joint, every cell begged him to stop. He kept walking. He fell again and again and again. Each time he got back up. Each time it took a little longer. Each time the cold felt a little more welcoming. At the 11-kilometer mark, he started to see things. Shadows in the snow that looked like people. Voices on the wind that called his name. His grandmother, standing ahead of him with her arms open wide, smiling like she had before she got sick. Not yet, he told them. I am not finished yet. They faded, the storm remained. And then through the white, he saw something dark. It was not a shadow. It was not a dream. It was real, solid, a shape that did not belong in this landscape of endless white. The transport sled. It lay on its side, half buried in a snow drift. The emergency beacon on top was dark and dead. But as staggered closer, forcing his frozen legs to carry him those last impossible meters, he heard something. A sound small, weak, but unmistakable. A whimper. Something inside that had been dying came back to life. He moved faster, falling and rising and falling again. He reached the sled and dropped to his knees, digging at the snow with hands he could no longer feel. And there, huddled together in a pile beneath the overturned sled, he found them. 7 cubs, 7 small bodies pressed together, their silver fur rimed with frost. They were barely breathing. They were barely conscious, but they were alive. Little Myra looked up at him with eyes that could not focus. She was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "Warm," she whispered. "You are warm." Wanted to cry. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to collapse right there and never get up again. Instead, he started pulling supplies from his pack. The hardest part was over. No, that was wrong. The hardest part was just beginning. The cubs had done everything right. When the sled crashed, the oldest among them had taken charge. Her name was, and she was only 4 cycles old, but she had remembered her survival training. She had gathered the others. She had led them to the most sheltered spot she could find. She had made them huddle together, sharing body heat, using their fur as nature intended. It had not been enough. The long dark was too strong, too cold, too hungry. But it had bought them time, time for someone to come, time for a miracle. Worked fast. His hands were numb and clumsy, but he forced them to obey. He activated every emergency heating unit he had, placing them around the cubs in a circle. A small bubble of warmth formed in the killing cold. It was not much, but it was something. He wrapped each cub in thermal blankets, 7 little silver bundles that shivered and whimpered. He gave them the emergency medications that would help their bodies fight the cold. He talked to them the whole time, keeping his voice calm and steady. "You are okay now. I have got you. We are going home. Just hold on a little longer." Little Myra clung to his arm. Her small claws dug into his suit, but he did not mind. "Are you a spirit?" she asked. "Mother said the spirits come for you when you die." "No, little one, I am not a spirit, I am just a human." "What is a human?" Smiled, though she could not see it behind his frozen visor. "Something very stubborn." He took count of the cubs, 7 in total. Myra's daughter, the brave one who had kept them alive. A boy named who was unconscious but breathing. Twin girls named Sarah and who held each other and would not let go. A tiny cub named who was the youngest, barely old enough to walk. And an older boy named who had frost damage on his ears but was awake and alert. 7 cubs, 12 kilometers of storm between them and safety, and was already dying. He sat back and looked at them. His suit's display was mostly dead now, but the parts that still worked told him the truth. His core temperature was dropping. His heart rate was slowing. His body was starting to shut down, one system at a time. He had maybe 2 hours left, probably less. The walk here had taken almost 3. Impossible math. 7 cubs, none of them able to walk. A dying human. A storm that wanted to kill them all. Closed his eyes and thought about giving up. Just for a moment, it would be so easy. He had done enough. He had found them. He had kept them alive for a little longer. Someone else could take it from here. He could rest now. Then he opened his eyes and looked at Myra. She was staring at him with those big golden eyes, still holding onto his arm. "Are we going home?" she asked. And just like that, the thought of giving up vanished. It was not even a choice. There was no universe in which let this child die. "Yes," he said, "we are going home." He started to build a harness. He used every strap and cord from his pack. He tied them together, tested the knots, made adjustments. The harness was ugly and awkward, but it would hold. 3 cubs went across his chest, secured against his body. Myra and one of the twins, 2 cubs went on his back, tied in place with straps that cut into his shoulders. And the remaining 2 he carried in his arms. The weight was crushing. Over 100 kilograms of living cargo plus his pack plus his dying suit. Was not a big man. He was not particularly strong. His body was already at its limit. He stood up anyway. His knees screamed. His spine felt like it was on fire. His arms started to shake immediately. He ignored all of it. He took his first step. Then his second. Then he stopped counting. The journey back was worse than the journey out. He was slower now, weighed down by his precious cargo. The storm had not weakened. The cold was still hungry, and his body was failing faster than before. He fell at the 10-kilometer mark. He caught himself with his elbow, protecting the cubs in his arms. The impact sent pain shooting through his entire body. He lay there in the snow, gasping for a long moment. Then he got up and kept walking. He fell at the 8-kilometer mark. This time he landed on his side, and one of the cubs on his back cried out in surprise. He checked them all, made sure no one was hurt, and got up again. He kept walking. His suit's heating failed completely at the 6-kilometer mark. The last of the warmth faded away, and the cold rushed in like a flood. Could feel it eating into him, freezing his blood, killing him by inches. He redistributed the cubs, pressing them closer to his body. His core heat was all he had left now. He gave it to them freely. Better him than them. He kept walking. At 4 kilometers, his legs stopped working properly. They would not bend the way they should. They felt like wooden posts, stiff and clumsy. He compensated by turning each step into a controlled fall forward, catching himself at the last moment and repeating. He kept walking. At 2 kilometers, he started to die. He knew it the way you know the sun will rise, the way you know water is wet. His core temperature had dropped too far. His heart was struggling to pump blood that was thick with cold. His vision was going gray at the edges, tunneling down to a narrow point of light. But the den was close now. He could see the lights through the snow, small and far away but real. He kept walking. Myra, pressed against his chest, looked up at him. Her golden eyes were wide with fear. "The warm is going away," she whispered. "I know, little one." "Are you dying?" Did not answer, he just kept walking. One step, one more step, one more, the lights grew closer, the cold grew stronger, his body grew weaker. But he did not stop. He would not stop. Not until every single one of these children was safe. The death songs had been going for hours. The pack sat in the great hall, voices rising and falling, mourning their lost cubs. Some of them had stopped believing in miracles. Some of them had never started. Then the outer door alarm sounded. Pack leader was the first to reach the entrance chamber. He pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding, afraid to hope. The monitors had lost track of the human's life signs 2 hours ago. Everyone assumed he was dead. Everyone assumed the cubs were dead too. The inner door cycled open. A figure stood in the entrance. It was covered in snow and ice. Its suit was dead, frozen solid. Its skin, where it showed, had turned blue. It should have been a corpse. By all the laws of nature and science, it should have been dead. But it was standing. And in its arms, pressed against its body, wrapped in frozen blankets, were 7 small shapes. "They are alive," said through lips that could barely move. His voice was a whisper, broken and faint. "Cold, need warming now." Then his legs gave out and he collapsed. The pack moved like a single creature. Hunters who had been trained for battle became gentle as mothers, lifting the cubs from the human's frozen arms. Healers rushed forward with warming blankets and medical equipment. Everyone had a job. Everyone knew what to do. Dropped to his knees beside the fallen human. Eyes were closed. His chest was barely moving. His face was the color of death. "Get the human healer," ordered, "now." They carried to the medical bay alongside the cubs. The healers worked on the children while the single human doctor on the base fought to save his fellow man. It was a battle against time, against cold, against death itself. Little Myra woke up first. She looked around with confused eyes until she found her father's face. "Papa," she said. Gathered her in his arms and held her so tight he was afraid he might break her. Tears ran down his furred cheeks. He had never cried in public before. He did not care who saw. "My little star," he whispered, "you came back to me." "The human brought us home," Myra said. "He carried us the whole way. He told me not to be scared." She looked around the room. "Where is he? Is he okay?" Looked toward the corner of the medical bay. where the human doctor was working frantically over still form. "I do not know, little one, I do not know." The next few hours were the longest of life. One by one, the cubs woke up. One by one, they were declared stable. The brave one told everyone what had happened, how the human had appeared out of the storm like a spirit, how he had wrapped them in warmth, how he had carried all 7 of them on his back, walking through the long dark on legs that should not have worked. He fell a lot, said, but he always got up again every time. He never stopped. The adults listened in silence. They had lived on this frozen moon for 300 years. They knew what the long dark could do. They knew that no one should have been able to do what the human had done. And yet he had done it. 3 days later, woke up. The first thing he saw was a ceiling he did not recognize. The second thing he saw was Pack Leader sitting beside his bed, watching him with those golden eyes. "You are awake," said. Apparently, his voice was rough. His whole body hurt, but when he tried to move his fingers and toes, they all responded. The cubs. All alive, all healthy. They will carry scars, but they will live full lives. Closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Good, that is good." "You almost died." "Yes." "The doctors say it is a miracle you survived. They say your heart stopped twice on the table. They say you should have lost your hands and feet to the cold." Opened his eyes and looked at his hands. They were bandaged, but he could move them. "I guess I got lucky." Lucky made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. Is that what humans call it? "What would you call it?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, deeper. "My daughter lives because of you. 6 other cubs live because of you. You walked into the heart of the long dark, something no would have survived, and you walked out again carrying 7 of our children." He shook his great head slowly. "We would not have done what you did. We could not have done it. Our bodies would have failed before we reached them. We knew this. We accepted this." "But I did not accept it." "No, you did not," stood up and moved closer to the bed. "We have a word in my language. It means one who belongs, one who is family. We have never used this word for an outsider before. In 300 years, not once." He leaned down until his face was close to his. Then, slowly and carefully, he pressed his forehead against the human's. "You are now," said, "from this day until the last star dies. Your children will be our children. Your pain will be our pain. Your home will be our home." Felt something warm bloom in his chest. It had nothing to do with body temperature. It was something older and deeper, something that crossed the boundaries between species. "Thank you," he whispered. No, pulled back and looked at him with eyes full of emotion. "Thank you." In the years that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. They told it to anyone who would listen. They told it to traders and travelers, to diplomats and scientists, to children and elders. They told the story of the human who walked into the long dark, the soft, furless, clawless creature who had no right to survive but survived anyway, who carried 7 cubs on his back through a storm that should have killed him, who refused to give up, refused to stop, refused to let death win. Other species heard the story and shook their heads. Humans were not impressive. They were small and weak. They had no natural weapons. They could not survive in extreme heat or cold. By all logic, they should have been prey. But they knew better. When asked why they trusted humans above all other species in the galaxy, they always gave the same answer. Because when our cubs were dying in the cold, the human did not ask if it was possible to save them. He simply got up and started walking. That, they said, was what made humans terrifying. Not their weapons, not their technology, not their numbers. Their refusal to give up. No matter what. No matter how impossible. No matter the cost. Because in the end, humans did not believe in impossible things. They just kept walking until impossible became reality. And that was something worth respecting. That was something worth fearing. That was something worth loving. Little Myra, now grown with cubs of her own, would sometimes tell the story to her children. She would describe the frozen figure that had appeared out of the storm, the warmth of his body as he carried them home, the way his legs kept moving even when they should have stopped. "Remember this," she would say. "When the world tells you something cannot be done, think of the human. Think of how he walked into death and walked out again. Think of how he refused to let us go." And her children would nod and tuck the story into their hearts. Because that was what stories were for. To remind us what love looked like. When it had no limits,